I feel like there is a real media double standard in the way that white terrorism is framed as opposed to violence and terrorism committed by black and brown people.
You know, I think you might be onto something there.
Why isn't the president talking about the white terrorist,
Nazis and white supremacists are terrorists, just like ISIS.
Radical white extremism? Nobody on the right is calling for those in the white community to do more to weed out these radicalized extremists.
Do you believe that white terrorism and extremism is as much a threat to some in this country as something like ISIS?
The double standard is that nobody frames any display of political violence around the world as an instance of brown terrorism. No one is declaring that the number one issue we face right now is brown extremism. That would be a useless and racist attempt to describe a problem. White people get special treatment, though. This must be that famous privilege we've heard so much about. I mean, just look at this rotund, dripping wombat bloviating beside a sign that says, "White Terror." What's the equivalent of the Young Turks network, but on the right? Infowars, maybe? Louder with Crowder? Someone do me a favour. Find me a shot of Stephen Crowder sitting next to a placard that reads Brown Terror. Are you trying to start a race war by any chance? Is that what's going on here? I suppose generally I like to apply the maxim that one shouldn't attribute to malice that which can be explained by idiocy, but I don't know.
Let's look at Nicholas Cruz. He shoots loads of kids. It's kind of attributed to well, he had a difficult life and he did this and that. Clearly that is never done for any Muslim.
Depends who you ask, really. There are plenty of deluded journalists out there who try and explain away Muslim terrorism through appeals to Western foreign policy decisions, for example, or discrimination. Loudmouths like Chris Hedges and Abby Martin seem to have built their careers on little else, quite frankly. The real question is, why do honest and sane people identify Islamic theology as the relevant factor when describing an event like the Manchester bombing, but don't think that the Florida shooting can be best understood by focusing on the perpetrator's race? And the answer is, because we're not fucking mental.
The fraught nature of this discussion around what is terrorism tends to, on the one hand, try and, I think, downplay the fact that we should call Islamist terrorism.
That's actually not the issue. Even the far left are prepared to describe 9/11 as terrorism. It's the Islamic nature of the terrorism that's often shied away from, and precisely where the focus needs to be. It's the motivation behind the action. And the fact that we can't emphasize that without petrified loons kicking sand in our eyes by changing the subject, that's what's so frustrating.
We should.
Yes, but on the other hand, the shooting that Nicholas Cruz carried out might not be terrorism.
Correct, it's not. And look at this dweeb on the left. Reality's about to give him a nervous breakdown. Check this out.
We should.
Yes, but on the other hand, the shooting that Nicholas Cruz carried out might not be terrorism, might be a mass school shooting. And what is wrong with having that conversation? And what is wrong with having that conversation? And what is wrong?
Watch this, Lise. You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
And what is wrong with having that conversation?
I mean, what is that? Is he evolving?
have that conversation, but then I think we need to be very clear about what we define as terrorism.
I use a dictionary, me, but I've always been weird like that. What political end was Cruz trying to achieve through his actions? Where are his list of demands? Where's his manifesto or ideological underpinning? When terrorists who happen to be white do the things that they do, we label them terrorists. The IRA were terrorists. The Unabomber was a terrorist. Nobody is shying away from that. And conversely, there are plenty of brown and black people, as you put it, who perpetrate violence and aren't classified as terrorists. Gangbangers on the south side of Chicago are not terrorists. They're just run-of-the-mill thugs and criminals.
If you Google the word terrorist, it's all stereotypically brown men in scarves, right? A completely unacceptable definition of something that white media has essentially created to imprint a certain aesthetic on a certain word.
Oh my god, can you believe this guy's actually a real person? This is why Jordan Peterson has a career, by the way, right here. I mean, get this twerp 12 rules for life, buy him a CBT package deal, sign him up for the self-authoring program, because there are some demons swimming around inside that dark brain cave of his. Yes, Mega Soy Boy, if you Google terrorist, you are shown pictures mainly of Muslim men because Muslim men commit close to 100% of the terrorist attacks worldwide. Of the 1.6 billion Muslims on Earth, conservatively, around 20% are either active terrorists or providing succor, aid, resource of some kind to the active terrorists. That's 320 million people. So, let's play a game. We'll take it in turns. You name a so-called white terrorist, and I'll give you Nicholas Cruz. Take him. He's yours. And I'll name a Muslim terrorist, and we'll see who runs out first. Then maybe you'll understand why we focus on Islamic terror, because it represents an infinitely greater problem, you spaz.
Would you say that the guy who drove into the crowd of worshippers outside Finsbury Park Mosque, was he a terrorist?
Yes, he was a terrorist. Everybody said he was a terrorist. He was convicted and will rot forever in jail. That's a difference between the odd terrorist that springs out of the West. They are arrested, roundly condemned, and punished. They aren't sponsored or encouraged. Here's the difference. If upon discovering Darren Osborne, the British government had said, right, here's what we're going to do, lads. Let's invest billions of pounds in an organisation to spread the ideology of Darren Osborne. We'll fund churches throughout the Middle East that preach his teachings and build training camps all over Europe, instructing generation after generation of little Darren Osbornes to wage an eternal crusade against Muslims. Then we'll provide this guerrilla army with Kalashnikovs and money and trucks of their very own so they can replicate the Finsbury Park attack again and again and again and again. And the best part is, when the world starts to complain about what we're doing, we can simply dismiss everyone as Osbornophobic. Oh, what a laugh we shall have. When that happens, come back to me.
No, but that was linked to terrorist attacks. So it was in the discussion about, I mean, what he was doing, he claimed that it was in relation to previous terrorist attacks.
And that's political, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was political.
So is he a terrorist?
Yeah, well, yeah, you could say that he was a terrorist.
You can't even say it. You're shocking. I'm actually shocked. Actually shocked.
She did say it, Mega Soy Boy. You're being ridiculous. No, scrap that. You are ridiculous. At least the other idiot on the left is trying to make a case. You just need to be tranquilized.
The thing about terrorism and the way that we qualify that is about undermining a whole society's way of living.
Exactly. But it's useless pointing that out to them, because I get the feeling, well, one of two things is going on here. Either the regressives just want to label anything violent a white person does as terrorism to create this smokescreen that we talked about earlier, or they are incredibly confused. I suppose it could be that. I mean, for instance, are you puzzled because terrorist sounds a bit like terrorize? Is that it? I understand that both words are quite similar, but crash course in common sense here. If you terrorize people, you aren't automatically a terrorist. Otherwise, John Carpenter would be a bloody terrorist. After all, The Thing? That terrorized me. And what about Halloween? Ooh, there's White Terror, look. He's even got a mask to make it obvious. Fucking ridiculous.
You should be quite firm in calling him a terrorist. You should be quite firm in calling the murderer of Joe Cox a terrorist. If you can murder a politician in this country being a white supremacist, you know, actually murder an MP, and there's even a conversation about whether you're a terrorist, that is insane.
No, what's insane is that we're even talking about these two anomalies in a world where Muslims are killing people all the time, in every country, en masse, because of their religion. What's insane is the BBC wasting airtime on this tripe. What's insane is that this man is not on medication. What's insane is that people are still running from this. They are so desperate to avoid the problem, because that's what it's all about. They know, deep down inside, they're perfectly aware that the problem is with Islam. Not just regarding terrorism, but in the context of a plethora of issues that we have to deal with in our societies now on a daily basis. Pointing the finger at Whitey isn't going to solve any of that. Now, fuck off, go clean your rooms, study the stats, and get a goddamn clue. Laters, adios, a bientôt.
Take care now. Bye-bye then.